Welcome to Bills by the Numbers, where we tell you where the Bills are at based on the stats. We're presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Coming up, the growing trend of mocking the Bills a running back in round one of the 2022 NFL Draft. Does it make sense? Steve and I discuss. We also have Sirius XM NFL Radio and former NFL GM Mark Dominik joining us to talk backs and Bills draft. And our one burning question asks, what first-round position pick might the Bills make that could frustrate you? We're dealing with everyone's feelings. Hurry up! The trade phone is ringing! Glad you can make it into Bills by the Numbers, presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Bills Wall of Famer Steve Tasker there. Bills insider Chris Brown with you. And with the draft just days away, we examine the latest trends concerning the Bills pick at 25. And the one gaining traction of late is a running back for the Bills at 25. That might excite you. That might tick you off a little bit. GM Brandon Beane was asked in the week leading up to the draft about the prospect of drafting a running back early, and he did not rule it out, just as he presumably would not rule out any other position if the player was dynamic enough. In any event,
this just in, he didn't even rule out drafting Brownie, so
I would not advise that.
Let's not all lose hope.
But in any event, Iowa State running back Breece Hall is considered by many to be the best of the bunch in this year's class at running back and has been mocked the most to Buffalo at pick 25 in terms of ball carriers. A few notes on Hall: great straight line speed, ran a 4.39 40 time at the combine, although that speed is not always noticeable on tape. But he is a load, 6'1", 217, played in a zone scheme for the Cyclones, can catch out of the backfield, but isn't necessarily a route runner right now, more of a screen game target, can hold up in pass protection, but needs work there as well. Back-to-back 1,400-plus yard rushing seasons, as well as 20-plus touchdowns in each of the last 2 years. So first question, Steve, does Breece Hall sound like a first-round pick to you?
At number 25, which is where we're talking about, late first round, yeah. I mean, it's hard to even envision a running back being taken like that because there's really – but let's put it this way. Yes, because of where the Bills are, certainly you'd love to see them take a corner. I don't know what they know about Dane Jackson. I know I've seen him. I got a lot of faith in him, and I'm talking about cornerbacks now, not running backs. And that's kind of the position we're looking at, saying maybe if there was a positional need, that's where it would be, a top flight corner. Tre'Davious White, how he comes back, might take him a while to get on board. All of that stuff. But if you've got a blank slate of a roster like the Bills always try to get right before the draft where they can just take the best player no matter what position he is, yeah, Breece Hall is that kind of player, particularly on a team like Buffalo who got a lot of benefit from a running game last year at the end of the season. In my opinion, two reasons for that. Their offensive line got stable and stayed there for the last 3 weeks of the regular season and through the playoffs. They started to see some benefit from that, and that helped Devin Singletary emerge as the number one guy. Breece Hall, you would think, has more tools than Devin Singletary. He's faster, he's bigger, and like you say, he's got some skins on the wall. Two back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. Mm-hmm. He's a big dude, and I don't know whether he's even on websites you go to and watch him, and you see him on film. Hey, he plays good and stuff. Is he 5'11" or is he 6'1"? He's listed at 5'11". Then in the breakdown, they said, yeah, he's a 6'1" guy. And on the same website, they've got him listed at both. He's big.
He's 6'1" in cleats, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Well, aren't we all though, right? So, yes, he's got the talent and the skill set to be a high draft pick at that spot. Only a team like, and I'm saying this, I guess, for us, only a team like Buffalo would be in a spot where, you know what, this guy might be a little bit of a cherry on top of the cake for our offense.
And I think that's what we're looking at here, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got a roster that is now in year 6 of its development. And picks like Breece Hall are not deemed luxury picks for a team like the Bills because their holes are minimal, and a player of Breece Hall's caliber could help the Bills. Could he help other teams? Yes, but
he's going to be a contributor wherever he goes. He's that kind of player.
That's right. But I think his value to the Bills is different than to a team like the Jets or, some other team that has more glaring positional needs. He would be viewed as, why are they taking a running back in round one?
A little bit.
They need 3 defensive ends, 2 linebackers, a wide, like there are other teams with that many holes. The Bills don't have as many holes. So you can get to a place where if the board falls a certain way, Breece Hall could make sense. I'm just going to tell you right now, Steve, last year, Brandon Beane said the same exact thing about drafting a running back early because what was the buzz last year? Travis Etienne.
Right.
But how did the board fall last year?
The kid that
Travis
went to Pittsburgh.
And Najee Harris.
Najee Harris.
But Najee Harris goes to the Steelers at 24, and Jacksonville takes Travis Etienne off the board at 25. I can tell you on good authority, Travis Etienne was a legitimate consideration of the Bills in round 1 last year. Bottom line was he wasn't on the board at 30.
Right.
Bills are drafted at 25 now. It's a little bit of a different conversation.
Yes, it is.
There's also the conversation with this. Breece Hall isn't the number 1 running back on everybody's board either.
Right.
Some people like Kenneth Walker III out of Michigan State better than Breece Hall.
We were watching them yesterday. I was watching them both yesterday. You'd be happy with both those guys. One's 5'9", 211. One's 5'11", 217. They're kind of the same guy. But I think Kenneth Walker is a little more nifty. Breece Hall has a home run, straight line speed.
Yeah.
I think both of them have a skill set that's a little different. As you said, pass protection's got to be a thing for these guys. They got to step up into.
Both need work in that area, but most running backs coming out in the draft need work in that area.
Yeah, they don't put those guys on the field in college to pass block.
Right.
So I think both of them could be. And I say this, I think a little bit of it has been the trend in the National Football League. Certainly, nobody's taken a running back like the Giants did with Saquon Barkley. Nobody's doing that this year. And I think still, even in the environment we're in, it's a throwing league. And you've got to weigh where your team's at. You've got Steph Diggs, you've got Gabriel Davis, you've got Isaiah McKenzie, you've got Jamison Crowder, you've got Touchdown Jesus, you've got Isaiah Hodgins in the pipeline, Marquez Stevenson.
In the pipeline.
How good are those guys? And if you get a guy at 25, which you could get a guy who has some traits in
You're
this
talking
draft,
receiver now?
wide receiver.
Okay.
You've got to weigh that contribution in the midst of all of those guys as not only a guy who can contribute if everybody stays healthy. What if everybody doesn't stay healthy?
Yeah. What if you lose somebody?
What if you lose somebody?
Who do you have outside? And that's a question that's been asked here in Western New York. What do you have that's proven on the outside behind Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis? There's not a lot in the cupboard right now.
Nobody.
You got inside guys. Jamison Crowder's here.
He's very good. I like him.
Isaiah McKenzie has shown he can play the slot.
And play it well.
And Isaiah Hodgins in college played in the slot. He's an inside guy, even though he's tall. Now, that's not to say they wouldn't put him outside if they needed somebody. And you got Jake Kumaro. But, Kumaro, his value here is on special teams primarily.
As is Marquez Stevenson.
Not saying he can't do it, but primarily that's his value here.
But he's a big target and he can run.
So you could very easily justify taking a receiver. In round 1, I don't know, though. I don't know in round 1.
It depends on who's there.
Right, and how the board falls.
What if Jameson Williams is there?
Well, yeah, that changes the conversation.
It does. It changes.
It depends how the board falls.
I
don't think there's any way.
I don't know if there's a handful, maybe a handful or a little bit less of wide receivers who, if things fall right and one of those guys is available, there ain't no running back in the last 5 years that you'd take ahead of one of those guys.
Right, because this is a team that's going to throw it 40 times a game.
You got Josh, and you're gonna maximize that.
Now, second question. If you had to make a case for taking a running back in round 1 for the Bills at 25, what would the main points of your argument be? I'm now putting you in the justify the running back pick argument. What's your argument for the Bills as to why you would do it?
There's two main ones. One, he's significantly better than anybody we have on our roster right now.
Okay.
That's the first one. Secondly would be we have confidence in the guys we've been talking about outside. We're going to make it through the season. And I think, like, for instance, Isaiah Hodgins, we have high hopes for him.
We believe in our pipeline
guys. We
guys.
believe in him. With Cole Beasley out of his way, Isaiah Hodgins is ready to step in there. Or Isaiah McKenzie showed us enough in the 2 times he got on the field. We're going to plug him in, plug and play. Or we're going to go double slots. We're going to have Gabe Davis and Steph Diggs outside, and we're going to put both Crowder and McKenzie in the slots, and we're going to go like that. We're going to do some things where a running back is the guy we need. All of that could be in there. That would justify it to me. He's significantly better than anybody we have. And Ken Dorsey, the new OC, thinks the guys we've already got on the roster are deep enough that that running back is a guy we could use just a little bump with, and that would be it.
For me, whether it's Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker III, and you want to take him at 25 because the board falls a certain way, and the best you can do there is taking the best running back off the board, I'd argue that whether it's Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker III, they take the red zone rushing load off of Josh Allen. Coach McDermott talked about taking hits off Allen in the read option game. A first-round back could do that. With offensive line coach Aaron Cromer coming in and knowing what he did for Buffalo's running game the last time he was here, back-to-back years, number 1 in the league in rushing, a dynamic back with breakaway speed could be the final piece for a dynamic offense. It's also been proven that running backs can often have an early impact. Najee Harris being the latest example. Running backs can come in as rookies and make an impact right away.
A guy with a talent, you hand him the ball and let him do what he does.
It's not a highly cerebral position to play, so young players can come in and make an impact.
It's not like offensive tackle or wide receiver.
Or tight end.
Where you've got techniques and how to run the route and what the quarterback expects and how deep you want to. Running back, you hand him the football, and there's nothing about hand placement or foot placement. It's like, what do you see? Go. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's an instinctive position. It's about the physicality of it and the instinctiveness of it and your physical tools. That's why a young player can get plugged in and go. That's why, you've got young players who contribute early in their career.
Third question for you, and I think I already know this answer based on your draft philosophy as a pseudo GM. Would you take a running back in round 1, or are there too many reasons for you to avoid taking a running back in the first round?
Well, the biggest reason to avoid taking a running back in the first round is there's somebody else who can contribute more on a down-to-down basis, or particularly given the climate of the offense right now. We don't know what it's going to look like. Ken Dorsey may have a different philosophy. We don't know. But if it's Brian Daboll, we're throwing it. I don't need a running back unless it's a Alvin Kamara type, and neither one of the guys we're talking about. There's no Alvin Kamara in this.
And let's not forget, Alvin Kamara was a third-round pick.
Right. So for me, the big reasons, and you get to your question, is there's too many good things out there to put more assets into that position. Mm-hmm. They've drafted one each of the last 2 years, and I think if they're going to draft one, it'll be way down the line. That's my thoughts.
Right. Okay. For me,
not that I wouldn't love it, but
the bottom line is this. There is a scenario that presumably exists where the Bills would take a running back at 25. A number of things, I believe, have to be off the board before they get to that level of consideration. For me, I would avoid a running back in round 1 unless value at some of the other positions I'm looking at are garbage when I'm on the clock or when I'm about to be on the clock. If receiver, corner, offensive tackle, defensive tackle value are all poor, even pass rusher, which may sound crazy in light of the attention that the Bills have paid to that position in the draft the last few years, then I would consider running back, especially if I can get the best back on the board, on my board. But I feel like I can address running back later at less of a premium and still help my team. That's why, philosophically, I don't gravitate to running back. I only go to running back if the other positions that I consider premium, receiver, pass rusher, even defensive tackle, offensive tackle, if those are all exhausted and my value sucks at those positions when I'm on the clock at 25, then I turn to running back if the value makes sense.
That's right.
We move from the idea of a running back in round 1 for the Bills to some running back history in the draft for this edition of the Numbers Game.
Oh, no.
Steve, are you ready?
Okay.
This is not too hard, I will tell you. And I gotta say, Steve's been cleaning up. I think I've made it too easy in the Numbers Game. He's like a seasoned veteran.
Oh, now this pendulum's going to swing back the other way. It was 1947.
No. So here we go. Question number 1, running back history in the draft. What NFL draft year were there more than 2 running backs chosen in round 1? More than 2 in round 1.
More than 2.
Because last year there were 2. Najee Harris and Travis Etienne.
Wow. What drafted more than 2?
I will tell you, it's not as far in the past as you might think.
I was going to say it wouldn't be like 2000, like 17, something like that.
You're very close. It's 2018.
Right. It was Josh's year.
It is Josh's year. Now, can you name? There were 3 running backs taken. Can you name the 3 running backs?
Saquon.
That is 1.
That's about it for me.
The others were taken in the 20s, down in the low 20s.
Down lows. Yeah.
Seattle picked 1.
Wait. Okay. I'll never get it. Who's the other one? What was the other team?
New England.
Sony Michel.
There you go.
And Seattle would have been
1 more. Oh, it's right there.
It's not right there. This blank stare is meaningless. This blank stare is truly blank. I don't know.
This is why I love playing this game. It's so entertaining. Every single
Who was it? Marshawn Lynch is the only Seattle running back I can think of. Kurt Warner.
Oh, my God.
Right?
Kurt Warner.
Right? I mean, come on.
Rashad Penny was the other first-round pick at running back.
That name is meaningless to me.
Incidentally, Sony Michel, no longer with the Patriots, as we know. I believe he's with the Rams. Rashad Penny, still in Seattle, at least as far as we know right now.
Right.
Question 3, Steve. How many times in their draft history have the Bills taken a running back in round 1?
Oh,
Just give me a number.
There's a ton.
If you had to guess how many times running back, round 1, Buffalo.
OJ, Greg Bell, Marshawn, Spiller. I'll say I'm missing 1. 4, 5.
5 is not the correct answer. It's more than that.
Oof, yeah, okay.
It's
Cookie. Yeah, I'll bet is it double digits?
It is double digits.
Oof. So in 50, okay, I'm going to say 13.
You're close. It's 11.
Wow.
11 times in round 1, the Bills used a first-round draft choice on a running back.
I can name.
I don't want all 11. Give me 6.
Okay.
Give me more than
Okay,
half.
Here we go. Marshawn.
Correct.
Spiller.
Correct.
OJ.
Correct.
Cookie.
No.
Okay. Greg Bell.
Greg Bell, correct. That's 4. Need 2 more, and I'll be happy.
Thurm was first pick of the second.
Yeah, he was a second-round pick. Not on this list.
Oh man, and some more. The guy with the ACL from Miami. Who is it? What's his name? Come on.
You're right there.
What's his name?
The miracle first-round pick.
The unbelievable with. All the people listening to this are going. They're screaming his name.
Steve, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Don't tell me. I'm going to get it. We're going to sit here. We're going to sit here for an hour.
We will spin the Rolodex in Steve's brain and get to this card and pull it.
Blew his knee up in the national championship. I can see his face. Greg Williams, draft pick. Tom Donahoe, draft pick.
Correct.
It's not. It was like before.
You're right there. There's also another guy.
I can't think of his name.
I know. I hate when that happens.
I know.
There's another guy, relatively modern era.
Oh, yeah, on Antoine Smith.
There you go. 1997 draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was rookie year.
So you've got Spiller in the 2010 draft, Lynch in the 2007 draft, Antoine in the 97 draft, Greg Bell in the 84 draft, and OJ in the 69 draft. You need 1 more to give me the 6 required that I asked of you.
Thinking guy's name. Number 21.
That's correct. Do you want me to give you initials? Will that help?
Yeah.
W.
Willis McGahee.
M. There you go. Willis McGahee. All he needed was the first initial. And we got there. Final question, Steve. Who, let me give you all the first-round running backs so you have the full list, okay?
Right.
Spiller, Lynch, McGahee, Antoine Smith, Ronnie Harmon, 86.
Oh, yeah, okay, good one.
Greg Bell, 84. Booker Moore, 81. Terry Miller, 1978. O.J. Simpson, 69. Mike Dennis and Ernie Davis in 1966 and 62, neither of whom played for the Bills. They went to NFL teams.
All right.
Question 5. Who was the most productive back in their first year on the field for the Bills?
First year on the field. Of those guys?
Yep.
I will say, that's a good question. I'll say Marshawn.
He was second.
Was he?
Very close.
The other one was Juice, right?
No.
OJ?
O.J. Simpson only 697 yards in his rookie year for the Bills.
Marshawn was second. Now, we say
Marshawn,
first year on the
280
field.
carries.
Let's say McGahee then.
That
first
would
year
be
on
correct.
The field,
It was Willis McGahee.
He had to wait a year.
2004, bursts onto the scene, 284 carries, 1,128 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns.
he's a good
I think he
player.
also had a couple of receiving touchdowns, too. The knee injury he came back from was nothing short of miraculous.
Catastrophic.
ACL, PCL, LCL, shredded. All of them.
If you've ever seen the video of Willis
don't watch
McGahee's knee
it.
injury
Don't
in the
watch it.
championship game, and it couldn't have not have come at a worse time. And I'll say this. Think about it. It was historic because the fact that he did that when he did it is in large measure one of the examples that players today give as saying, I don't want to play in that game. A college kid coming out said, I'm not going to play in my team's bowl game because, look at Willis McGahee.
Direct helmet hit on his knee.
It was a clean hit.
It was
But his knee hyperextended awkwardly big time.
grossly exploded.
So
If that did not happen
was
to him,
historic.
if that did not happen to him,
He would never have been a Bill.
He might have been the first pick in the draft.
Yeah.
He would not have gotten past pick 2.
Incredibly fast.
He was
great instincts.
ridiculous.
He was something else. And to have him come back and
he had to
lasted
be a
until
different.
what was he, 21 in the draft?
23.
23.
Pick 23.
23.
He had to change the kind of back that he was because of that knee injury. He was still fast, but he wasn't beat everybody to the corner. He was a 230-pound back
Who was
that ran in
outrunning
the
people.
4.3s.
Yeah.
He was
outrunning people.
insane.
He was like he was a Fred Taylor type talent, one of those
unbelievable.
guys. Yeah.
And still had a 10, 11-year career in spite of it. Good job in the numbers game, Steve. You're on a roll. Right now.
Willis McGahee got me. I'm gonna lay
Well,
awake.
you eventually got
I'm gonna
me.
lay awake in bed tonight thinking about that. I couldn't get it.
Right now, new customers can get their first bet risk-free up to $1,000. Just sign up today by going to thesportsbook.fanduel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. FanDuel Sportsbook, an official partner of the Buffalo Bills. Time now to discuss this year's running back class in the draft, as well as what the Bills will be looking at when they're on the clock at 25 and for the rest of the draft for that matter. For all of that, we turn now to Sirius XM NFL Radio host and former NFL GM Mark Dominik. All right, Mark, so the first one I've got is there has been this growing opinion that the Bills, with the way the board falls, may be faced with taking a running back at 25 in round 1. First part of the question, how likely do you think it is? Second part of the question, what's your best justification for a running back in round 1 for a team like Buffalo?
Well, I do think it's in play. It has to be based off the team needs and where this roster actually currently sits. It makes a lot of sense that running back would be in play. And so I think it's going to be close. I think there could be a corner that drops right where Buffalo sits, or I think you could sit there and see if the running back, the top running back, maybe in the entire draft comes to you at 25. And those seem very likely to me. So I think it's almost a toss up between those two positions. The value, I think, of a running back when you draft one in the first round, and I've done that before back in 2012 with Doug Martin, is that you get that 5th-year option. And so now not only do you have the running back through 4 years, you've really got control of that contract for year 5 on the 5th-year option. Then technically a franchise year or 2 where you've got control of a running back for 7 years. And by then, if the career is over and he's not got it anymore, you just move on. And that's a good win. And so I think in that kind of situation, if you can get a guy that's a productive player for your football team, is going to jump in day 1 and start. We saw the Pittsburgh Steelers do it last year. I think it's a good move.
Yeah, one of the things we've been talking about are Kenneth Walker III, Breece Hall from Iowa State. The skill sets are one of the things, you see highlights of these guys. All of them have the ball in their hand running down the field. But the pro game's a little different than the college game. Is there a skill set or a guy that maybe is off the radar, or maybe one of these two guys I just mentioned that is one of those guys that, hey, he's pro ready. He can catch the ball. He can run routes. He can do all the things. He can pass protect, all of that stuff, because the college game is still a little bit different than the pro game at that position.
No, it very much is. And Breece Hall, to me, makes more sense to the organization than a Kenneth Walker, because I trust his hands so much more. And I do think that's such an important part of what you guys are doing in the Buffalo Bills offense, is being able to have a running back not only has the weight to be able to handle the ball 20, 22 times in a game, but also still be productive in the passing game in both pass protection for Josh Allen and dumping the ball off. So would it limit some of the Devin Singletary role? Sure. But I think if you can have that all-purpose back, the guy that can catch the ball, protect, and then run the ball, that to me makes more sense at a 25 pick or for what the Buffalo Bills really want.
You mentioned cornerback already, Mark. In the event that, the value doesn't fall right in round 1, what's your assessment of the cornerback class as a whole? Is it considered to have good value between rounds 2 and 4, or is the drop-off from maybe the top tier concerning for you?
I think there's a little concern. I think if you're looking at safeties, round 2 and 3 is where the strength of the secondary is. But when you're looking at corners, I think it's round 1, and then you're kind of hoping to find the guy in the 4th or 5th round, kind of a small school project type of player, or just a complementary kind of a corner where it might not be a number 1 or number 2, but could be a 3 that hopefully works himself into a number 2 or number 1 role. But to me, when you're picking 25, there's a couple players that I still think are on the board or could be on the board for the Buffalo Bills, who I think you could put in there and say, hey, look, we can have him be opposite Tre'Davious and feel very comfortable about what production we're getting. Clearly at the top of the draft with Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley, we know I'd be shocked if either one of those two sneak out of round the top 10. But I do think, a Booth is an interesting player that could be in play for the Buffalo Bills at 25 that could be a good fit in terms of what the Buffalo Bills do defensively. He makes a lot of sense to me schematically.
Let me ask you this, just point blank. How many of these cornerbacks that you're talking about fall in ahead in their importance and their ability to contribute than any running back on the board? How many corners, you know what I'm saying, and value, and with the way the NFL values the position, how many corners fall above the importance of any running back that's on the board this year?
Yeah, I think there's about, I'd sit there and say 4 is about 4 corners that I think if they come off the board, I think you start to look at the Buffalo Bills and think, boy, more than likely 2 things happen. Number 1, here comes a running back at 25. Number 2, Brandon's looking at the phone, making sure that thing works because they want to trade back and actually pick up some collateral and maybe move back a little bit, which I don't think is a bad idea. To me, Buffalo's watching 2 things, right? They're going to be watching the quarterbacks come off the board because as more quarterbacks come off the board, better 25 starts to look, right, guys? Because then you're starting to push talent that Buffalo wants lower into the draft, and they're going to watch these corners come off the board. So if the corners can wait and the quarterbacks can go, then it's going to be a really good spot for, I think, Buffalo to want to stand still and just be. But if those things start to not peel off, if we don't see the quarterbacks go the way that some people predicted, if we see the corners all start to come off the board quickly and the quarterbacks stay there, then I think Buffalo might be either trying to move out or they could make a quick move and say, hey, look, we've got a good football team. Let's go up to 20, 21, because that's usually a hot spot. I saw that Brandon talked about, I don't have 32 first-round grades on these players, and that's very true. Every draft, you walk into a draft generally anywhere between 19 and 23 first-round grades. And that's why when you watch a draft unfold, you see a lot of trades around that range because clubs are saying, hey, look, that's my last favorite guy, and I don't think he's going to make it to me, so let's go get him. And so that's some of the strategy, too, that you do over the next couple of days when you call around the clubs and you sit there and say, what is your likelihood that you would move back? I just want to get a sense. Or are you pretty much set where you want to be? And between GM and GM, there's a lot of honesty there.
Yeah.
Right.
It seems as though, Mark, the receiver position is going to offer plenty of supply year over year in the draft, and this year appears no different. Without much that's proven behind Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis on the outside for the Bills, what prospect between rounds 2 and 4 might be a quality acquisition for Buffalo that could line up outside?
Yeah, I don't know if he makes it there. I really like Pickens out of Georgia. I don't think he makes it all the way down to 57. That seems like a long ways away. But it might be a guy that I might go get because I do think he's a explosive player that obviously was limited with injuries, but has so much potential. I think Sky Moore is a guy that obviously can vertically push things. And is it going to be probably a second round pick, mid-second round pick? So he could be in play. Those are two guys, a little bit bigger guy or a little bit smaller guy. But those two guys I would be aggressive about and probably trying to get them onto the roster to beef up that receiver room behind those two players.
Who do you see as the most likely candidate there's like 6 teams that have double picks, a couple of them in the top 10, top 15. Who do you see as because we've heard, obviously Deebo Samuels now wants out of San Francisco. You've got Baker Mayfield issues. Which of those teams, maybe none of those teams, which team do you think is in the market for a Baker Mayfield, Deebo Samuel, and how that affects the first round, particularly those teams with the 2 first-round picks who've got a little capital to spend and maybe throw at another team to get a guy?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting spots. It's a good question because I think there's number 5 pick overall where the Giants hit, considering they pick 7, is a very interesting spot for quarterback play. If somebody's fallen in love with the quarterback, to me, that makes perfect sense because the Giants can move back knowing that the team that's coming up more than likely is taking a quarterback. And then knowing that Carolina's kind of in that quarterback world too, they still may get the same guy at 5 as they do at 7. And now they're picking up collateral. And they're also picking up, I think, important for them, maybe draft picks for the next year's draft is what they're looking for to be able to make that move if Daniel Jones doesn't pan out. Certainly, New Orleans making that early move to get an extra first-round pick is intriguing. I do think that they're also thinking offensive tackle and wide receiver in the first round with those 2 picks. But maybe they found a quarterback too that they've been falling in love with, and therefore they're in position now to say, hey, look, the board sets, it actually does work for them in terms of offensive line and receiver. But maybe if the quarterback drops just a little bit in this draft, you could see New Orleans make that move and put somebody in place to challenge a Jameis Winston who, talking to players at New Orleans, are very comfortable with him being the starting quarterback. I think a lot of people just assume Jameis is just there and we'll see what happens. There's a lot of comfort there. So New Orleans is kind of an interesting, intriguing team. And I think for the Jets need players. They need a state pick. It's a rough roster. There's a lot of holes. And I think when you can get 2 top 10 players, if you're the Jets, you need to take advantage of that.
We're talking with Sirius XM NFL Radio host Mark Dominik, also former NFL GM of the Bucs. And the last one I've got for you, Mark, kind of dovetails off of what you were just addressing there. We've already seen a lot of player for pick trades involving this year's draft, then pick for pick trades. And with people like Deebo Samuel, presumably on the move, maybe even Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, who knows? Are you anticipating as we get closer to the draft and even within the scope of the draft, during the draft, we could see more player for pick trades than pick for pick trades?
You know what? I apologize. I should have answered that. I meant to answer the Deebo question, and I'm happy to kind of walk through him. He's hard to trade for. It's not like you're getting Stephon Diggs. You're getting a great player, but has had a ton of injury history.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trading for. And so therefore, his trade value is not as powerful as I think he thinks it is. And I think that's also why he's struggling in San Francisco in terms of getting that mega contract. And so now it's become, not being realistic about who you are as a player and that you've been banged up so much in your NFL career. And so for Deebo, I don't know how aggressive teams will be with him because I think, you want to give collateral, but you got to have him on Sunday too. And this is, to your point, it's always going to be a pretty good wide receiver class every year, it seems like, even if there's not the elite number 1 like we had in Jamar Chase last year, or the Waddle or the Smith from last year, the 3 top 11 guys. But I think in terms of picks for players, I think the reason why we're seeing more of that is, number 1, younger general managers are more aggressive. Number 2, the salary cap continues to accelerate. So now you have more and more space to be able to handle either, moving a player on or acquiring a player into your roster because of ways you can manipulate the contracts with voidable years and be able to stack it. And also looking out saying, hey, look, I know the cap's at $208 million this year. I think it's going to go to 230, 235 next year. Will be more than enough room to be able to handle this player. So I think that happens. And as for Baker Mayfield, My gut instinct is there's going to be a team that makes a play for him during the draft, but it's not going to be a first or a second round pick. I think it's more of a third or a fourth or a fifth even. And I think that's kind of just because I think some clubs are saying, let me see what happens in the draft, and then I might be more interested. But I expect once we get into the draft, you're going to see a lot more of the pick for pick, because when you do a pick for a player, you usually like to have that physical set and know exactly what you're getting. So like if you traded for Deebo Samuel and then he comes back and fails your physical, you don't get that first round pick back until next year. And so now you've just wasted a draft pick that you don't even get to have until the following year. So it's hard for me to see something like that happen. But so I think they'll be back to the traditional pick for picks during draft day.
Mark, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
And my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on. Go Bills.
We continue now with our one burning question. Steve, is there a first-round position pick that would frustrate you? A pick that would make you bite your lip if the Bills made it, or look like Jets fans did for all the drafts that took place in New York?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's...
Is there one that would frustrate you here in the first round at 25?
You're talking about, what are you going to do, draft a quarterback in the first round? I mean, you're right. Are you going to draft...
Well, okay.
You know, are you going to draft a tight end even? You got Dawson Knox now. You got O.J. Howard. You got. I mean, you're not going to draft.
I think a
one
tight
of those
end
guys.
would frustrate Bills fans for sure.
I think there are some draft picks that would raise some eyebrows for me, not just for the on the field performance, but for the relationships off the field. So for instance, if the Bills drafted a safety in the first round, with what's going on with Jordan Poyer, I'd be like, wow, they may not get something done with Jordan Poyer. That kind of thing would raise eyebrows as well. Frustration for me. No, I don't think there is one. I mean, I think any position they get, I can see it as adding. You know, we're talking depth in this draft most of the time because of the state of the roster right now. I can't think of one that would raise eyebrows except the ones I mentioned. You're not going to draft somebody in the first round.
Nobody's drafting
with Josh
a kicker
Allen.
there. Nobody's drafting a punter. Nobody's doing that. I'm just saying within reason.
Even a tight end, I think that would be frustrating for me because O.J. Howard is a toolsy guy who was projected as being, you know, a massive difference maker when he came out because of how fast and how big and how athletic he is.
I don't know if all the Bills fans heard this week when Josh addressed the media with the off-season conditioning program underway. They said, "Who caught your eye of the new guys in the building?" He goes, "O.J. Howard is a big dude."
Yeah.
Josh Allen
is
called
a big dude.
O.J. Howard a big dude.
Yeah.
The guy that's 6'5", 237 said O.J. Howard's a big dude.
And Josh is sitting there between, you know, Deion Dawkins on one side and Spencer Brown on the other, and he says, wow, O.J. Howard's a big dude.
Yeah.
It's hard to stand out in a room full of guys that stand out.
Yeah.
O.J. Howard did it.
For me, a position that might frustrate me a little would be
talking about first round.
First round, 25. Could be tight end. I think offensive tackle might even frustrate me a little bit because you got Spencer Brown, you got Tommy Doyle in the pipeline as a swing tackle. I'm not saying I'd be like, what are they doing? Because, you know, in Bean we trust. But, you know, I think there are expectations when it comes to the fan base. And the unsexy pick, I think, is what can you know what would rankle Bills fans? Another pass rusher. Or a defensive tackle.
A little bit.
I think that would rankle Bills. Like, why are we doing that?
A little bit.
It
wouldn't rankle me too much.
I wouldn't. You get Devontae Wyatt at pick 25. I'm going to be jumping. I'm going to be doing cartwheels in here.
You're going to take him, and you're going to, and all of a sudden the cornerback position becomes a little less urgent because you got guys that can really get after it up front.
And I think we should remember this. Yes, the Bills have added a number of defensive tackles to the roster out of necessity.
Yeah.
You lost Harrison Phillips. You had to cut ties with Star Latulele. So you add Jordan Phillips, Jaquan Jones, and Tim Settle. And then you have Shaq, who can kick inside on passing downs. But let's not forget.
Lawson's back.
Yeah, let's not forget this. Jordan Phillips, 1-year contract. Shaq Lawson, 1-year contract. Jaquan Jones has a 2-year deal. I believe Tim Settle has a 2-year deal, maybe longer. So next year, at this time, Jordan Phillips may not be here.
Right.
Shaq Lawson may not be here.
This again.
If you've got Devontae Wyatt, you're not worried.
I'll say this. Yeah, you're right. I'll say this. and I've said it a ton on our
And
show.
Ed
on this
Oliver,
show.
fifth-year option.
I've said this on our show a lot. The game commands so much. That's why football is such an intriguing game, because you have to bring effort every play. It's hard to push against another person every play and be physical and have people banging into you. It demands a lot of toughness and endurance and physical engagement. That's why it's so easy for these guys when you get up on a team just to take a breath, say, I'm just going to take a break here in this series, that kind of thing. And you can see it immediately when it happens by what happens on the field. You lose the line of scrimmage. You start getting pushed around up front. All that stuff happens. The Bills, I think they understand that as well as anybody. And I don't know whether it's a philosophy or what, but they get these guys on one-year deals who are trying to make another contract. They're highly motivated to do that. It takes that kind of motivation, not just the fact that you want to be a good player and you want to help your team win, but this is your career on the line this year.
This is supporting your family.
This means another year on my career. You've got to have that extra oomph for these big guys to go in there and engage on week 18. Week 17, when maybe you've got a playoff spot wrapped up and they want to take a break. They're not going to do that. And I think those kind of contracts, certainly it does make you wash through your roster a lot.
Yep.
But it does keep the big guys engaged. We saw signs of it the last time Jordan Phillips was here. We saw signs of it with Starlo Tulele. We saw signs of it with other guys who've been here, and with Marcel Darius when he signed his big deal. They just take it out of gear because that position and that position group is under high emotional and physical stress.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. As we bookend this podcast and bring it all the way back to running back, I actually think there would be less pushback or less disappointment on the part of the Bills fan base if they took a running back as opposed to a defensive tackle or a pass rusher. Because why? Yeah. It's easy to put highlights on of Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker III and be like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I got news for you, though. Go watch Devontae Wyatt run down.
Quarterback from North Carolina?
No, Bryant Young.
No.
The quarterback from Alabama, whose name is escaping me right now. He chases him 20 yards down the field in the SEC title game and tackles him from behind. Devontae Wyatt is 6'4", 315 pounds, running 20 yards downfield and catching a quarterback who runs like a deer.
Well, you know that Bills fans are going to, when they draft this guy, Bills fans are going to be on the internet.
Whoever it is.
Looking at his highlights. Yeah, there's some guys out there. If some of these top guys drop down and get to 25, the Bills will be jumping up and down, no question about it.
That'll do it for this edition of Bills by the Numbers. Please subscribe so you know when the next episode drops. And remember, when you need to know about the Bills, you need to check Bills by the Numbers. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. Thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you the week after the draft. We'll see you then.